This is my review for the Fisher & Paykel Designer ActiveSmart E522BRXFD4RH 7030 frost-free fridge freezer in stainless steel. Right, first of all, I just want to go through a few of the details of the fridge itself. It's got a really good capacity. It's 473 litres of capacity, which is really big. Can fit, for those that love a good fact, it can fit 26 full bags of shopping in. As you can see, the actual fridge is a really nice design, quite plain and simple, but in a really classy way. Even just down to the embossed Fisher Paykel logo on the front. It's in stainless steel, this model, but it does come in other colours if you were looking for others. There is various different styles of handles, but this one's got the plain square handle as well. Moving on to the fridge itself, we'll start with the top compartment, and as you can see, it's quite a short but wide fridge, making it quite squat. I find that's a really good feature to the fridge, as some taller fridges can be quite difficult to access the higher shelves. It also gives a lot of extra space on the door, as you can see. It gives a lot more room for objects that need to be stood up. Things like your milk, waters, any open bottles or containers can quite easily fit in the fridge door, as opposed to being stuffed somewhere on a shelf. Stops spillages and other leaks. So on to the ActiveSmart technology itself. This is the area at the back that distributes the cold air from the fridge and circulates it around. It's recommended that you keep this area as clear as possible, just because that's the coldest area, so if you do have your fridge turned up quite high, things can freeze now and again up there. It's probably one of the only slight downsides to the fridge, that this area needs to be kept as clear as possible, but it's not a necessity. Speaking of the temperature itself, part of the ActiveSmart technology, one of the features is its separate temperature controls. As shown just a few moments ago, they're located just on the inside of the door. This is really good in terms of how clever it is. If you're into your gadgets, it's brilliant for that kind of thing. As you can see, there was many little buttons on there. At the top, this one here is your compartment. As you can see, it's illuminated just there to show the top compartment. So we're looking at the fridge. If you press that, it just changes down to the bottom, which means you'll be able to control the freezer compartment. We'll change that back to the fridge at the moment. Here along the side are your buttons for warmer or cooler. We've got ours set just one below the medium at the moment, which is more than cold enough for us. If you do like your milk a little bit colder, you could drop that down, or warmer if you need to. Just next to those controls there is the alarm button. It has an alarm sensor, so if your fridge is left open for more than 20 seconds, an alarm goes off just to remind you, so you don't let unnecessary cold air out and ruin any of your food. I've got that just muted at the moment just while we do this, but it's a really handy feature, especially if you're a little bit absent-minded like myself. Some of the other features with regards to temperature for the fridge are these drawers here. At the moment we've got fruit and veg in there, and you can see these little sliders here. Moving this across to the vegetable section will keep the temperature and humidity in the drawer perfectly suited to vegetables, or slide that across and that sets it to fruit. Now, I didn't know previous to this that fruit and veg do like certain humidities and also certain temperatures, so it's good to know that, and it keeps them as fresh as long as possible. If you do have a little mixture in there of fruit and veg, you can just set that to the medium setting and it acts like a standard drawer. Speaking of drawers, again, it's only one of the small features or problems to get used to, but I'm always used to a drawer being up here, so it does take a little bit of used to getting hold of the handle underneath, but it does give you full access to all of your fruit and veg as you need it, nice and quickly. The drawer action itself is nice and smooth. There's no yanking and pulling like you get on ones that are sat just on the bottom sometimes. As you could hear there, that was the alarm hadn't been muted, so that was the alarm going off, so that was a good little example just as we go. Another thing that comes with the fridge and to pop in the freezer are these really handy bottle racks. They're fully detachable, so you can attach or put those into any of the shelves in the fridge itself. I've got mine just on the top because it's the coolest area. Previous to this, I don't know how I've lived without bottle racks like this. Usually you get maybe a wine rack, but it's always set into a fridge, the ones that we've had previously. The ability to move them wherever you need them is really, really handy. They can be taken out if you do need the extra shelf space at any point. I just think it's a really handy little thing that's added to the fridge. So top marks for those. Just going to move on to the freezer compartment now. Freezer compartment has your standard drawers in. As with the drawer in the fridge, the top one does have the slightly more unusual underside handle, but that does give you full access to all your food straight away. It's got a really good feature that keeps frost from building up, which can be a real problem, especially in the drawers of freezers. If you do find that, it's also got the temperature control. As you can see from the top drawer, it had its separate compartments, which were really handy just to separate foods. Your bottom one is more of your standard singular bin. It's really, really deep, which is great for fitting a little bit of everything in there. Plenty of room for vegetables, meats, even your big larger joints that you might get. Typically you might need to try and squeeze those in somewhere or put them into a chest freezer. But in here this can handle them really well. Sandwiched in between the two drawers is this shelf here. Again, very easy to access. It comes provided with 2 ice cube trays, which are an ideal size to pop in there. So handy access to ice if you need it. The shelf itself, at first I thought might be quite an unusual feature. I wasn't quite sure how we'll be able to use that, but if you've got things like pizzas, smaller boxes, anything that you need to really keep flat, it's actually really handy for. Sometimes if you've even got something like a liquid that you're looking just to freeze straight off, even soups and things that you may have made or casseroles, it's really easy to put them in without them spilling, being on top of other bags and things in the freezer, so it's actually a really, really handy feature. As with the fridge, the freezer has its own temperature controls, individually set apart from the fridge. Also, it has 2 other functions. One is fast freeze, which when pressed gives the freezer a 12-hour blast at full maximum freezing temperature. Ideally used to freeze fresh fruit or vegetables, keeping in all the vitamins and goodness. Can be used obviously for other items, but that's its main purpose. But it's a really, really good feature. Handy for plenty of other fruits, vegetables or other foods, for those that might need to use it. Bottle chill is ideal for those that like to entertain. The idea behind bottle chill is, everyone's probably done it, but you put a cold fizzy drink in a freezer, ideally because it's a little bit warm on a warm day, but you forget about it. This helps to alleviate that. You press the button and it puts a 15-minute chill in the freezer and sets an alarm, so it lets you know once your bottles are chilled, making sure that they're at optimum temperature, but then also lets you know that they're still in there so they don't pop and overflow all over the freezer. I think it's a really, really good feature, and one that I'll be using for definite. Just a brief summary then from my findings. Firstly, I think it is a perfect fridge as an alternative to some of the larger American style fridge freezers. It's perfect as a family sized fridge and freezer for those that are maybe slightly limited in space. I think it's really quiet for its size, and I think the ActiveSmart technology is just a really easy to use and great addition to a fridge. The controls are really easy to use, everything's really accessible, and it just works straight off the bat. If I had any downsides to it, really I'd need to be nitpicking. Things like the drawer handles being underneath, I really would just be nitpicking. Maybe the fact that sometimes you do have to keep this area a little bit clear does maybe limit the top shelf space depending on what you want to put on there, but all in all I'm just trying to find things that even out the review, just so I don't sound too overwhelmed by it. But I'm really impressed by it. I would recommend this model of Fisher Paykel to anyone really. But thanks for listening.